Go. This is Joshua Hart here for Seconds Out. Delighted today to be joined by Duke McKenzie MBE here on the Sunday evening over Zoom. Duke, really appreciate your time. And how is everything, first of all?
Josh, I'm good, mate. Thank you, Josh. Thanks for inviting me on, mate. Appreciate it.
Always better to have you on. You always give some great views. I know you and Eamon do a lot of interviews together, but I'm subbing myself in for Eamon today as he makes his journey over to Saudi Arabia ahead of Canelo next week. But before we talk about what's coming up next week, we have to look at last night. We saw a 35-year rivalry spreading from the fathers down to the sons, and a 2.5 year build up between them. Some would say come to a close last night between Chris Eubank Jr. and Connor Benn as the pair went to war for 12 rounds. Before we get into the nitty-gritty details of the fight, what was your thoughts on it as a whole, just viewing it?
The actual it was an event. It wasn't a fight. It was an event. It couldn't have gone any better as an event. There were people in that audience that you'd never seen before. I mean, proper boxing celebrities that probably never been to a boxing show before. But this fight captured the public's imagination. I had so many people going from my gym to watch this fight, and I was shocked. People saying, "Dude, I'm going to go to the Ben Eubank fight the weekend," and I had to scratch my head a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because I was just honest. I was shocked. But like I say, this fight captured the public's imagination. If their dads hadn't have fought, then this would have just been an ordinary run-of-the-mill fight. Everybody knows that. But there was so much, like I say, rivalry between the Eubanks and the Benns over the years. This is like you said, it's been going on for 35 years, this rivalry. And unfortunately, the actual fight itself, it couldn't live up to the expectations of what Ben Sr. has done and Eubank Sr. had done. However, as an event, it kind of surpassed that because, like I say, it was a 62,000 whatever sellout. They sold the place out. They could have done that twice over. They'll probably fight again, right or wrong. They'll probably fight again. Hopefully, I hope they don't fight again. But like I say, as an event, you couldn't fault that show last night. It was unbelievable.
What did you make of the 12 rounds shared between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr.?
Well, the fight itself wasn't anything special. We're not looking at special fighters. Do you see what I mean? They're domestic level at best in my eyes. Now, the fact that they were fighting, one another, and there wasn't any kind of a championship on the line was probably wrong because this particular fight had all the makings of a world title fight. It wasn't a world title fight. Obviously, there was no world title fight on the line. But the only thing that was missing was like the 24/7 build up. Seeing these guys in camp, how they trained, when they woke up, when they went to bed, what they ate, what they didn't eat. If that would have been the build up to this particular fight, then and then they would have put some kind of a championship on the line, then it couldn't have been any better in that respect. But there wasn't. This is just a fight between two very ordinary boxers. One's a middleweight, career's best middleweight. The other's a career best welterweight. So when you look at the dynamics of what we was actually looking at, like I said, it wasn't a great fight. There was no knockdowns. There was no real controversy. Nobody got cut. It wasn't close for me. Eubank won the fight quite comfortably, 3-4 rounds. Ben was never going to beat him. Didn't hit hard enough at welterweight. Wasn't going to hit hard enough at middleweight. So, the result was right for me. And the show goes on. They'll probably do it again. I don't begrudge either of these two boxers, no way, shape, or form, for fighting initially. They both got paid handsomely. It's like a king's ransom. If they offered me that kind of money to come out of retirement, I'm coming out of retirement. It's life-changing money. But, you can't keep chasing money. I mean, it was dangerous when you look at it realistically. For Eubank, it was such a dangerous thing to do. You've seen him drain himself out of every morsel and every ounce of fluid in his body to make that weight, and he still didn't make the 160-pound mark. He was still over the weight, and he had plenty of time to make the weight. So that tells you he can't do the weight. The fact that Connor Benn couldn't capitalise on it, on a weight-drained Eubank, he couldn't capitalise on it, he couldn't find a way to beat him, tells you exactly where those two are. You got a career's best welterweight against a career best middleweight. Now, Eubank was in serious danger, which is why he took himself off to the hospital straight after the fight to get himself checked out to make sure he wasn't hurt internally, any way, shape, or form, and also psychologically, any way, shape, or form. He would have had all the tests done, and I think he'll come through it fine. It was probably of a precautionary measure to make sure that he was okay. So the show goes on.
I find it interesting that you say you didn't think it was a great fight because looking at the reaction from a lot of people on social media saying it's one of the best fights they've ever seen on British soil. A lot of
Yeah,
arguments
they
for
would say
the draw
that.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, they would say that because they're armchair fans, they're critics, and they are the general public. It doesn't mean they don't know what they're not looking at, because it does. But to the trained eye, I'm a former world champion. I know what I'm looking at. These guys aren't the best two in the country. Never mind world class. They're not. And I'm not trying to slight them or put them down in any way, shape, or form. I'm just telling you what my own personal view is. Um, every time Eubanks has stepped up, he's been beaten. When he stepped up in genuine world-class fights, he gets beat. Connor Benn's never boxed anybody of a world class, to call himself a world-class fighter. He hasn't won an egg cup. So we're not looking at two of the best fighters in the world. So the public are going to say to themselves, these two are world-class, but in reality, they're not.
One of the big things in the build-up to this fight, and the big talking point was Chris Eubank Sr. and how against this fight he was. And then at the 11th hour, he spawns in at the event, and probably the loudest the crowd was until the main event rolled around. Were you surprised to see Chris Eubank Sr. turn up?
Oh, I was so surprised because he had told the world and his brother he wanted no part of the fight. He didn't want to be there. He wouldn't be there. He wouldn't be in Junior's corner because of his antics before the fight, and he wanted no part of it. So the fact that he did turn up, though, obviously, as a father, it pricked his conscience. Could he really not be there for his son? That really needed him there, because he said that in the build-up to the fight. He really hoped that his dad would see the light and he would turn up. Sometimes you've got to say what you mean and mean what you say. If you say you're going to do it, then you do it. If you say you're not going to do it, then you don't do it. And for whatever his reasons were turning up, I'm glad he did, because he obviously felt a need to be there for his son, and he was. And they got the victory, and a deserved victory.
You can see how big of an impact Senior's arrival had because even Connor Benn, who's bitterest rival for his whole career, really, and especially over the last 2.5 years, has been Chris Eubank Sr. I mean, Chris Eubank Jr., sorry. Even he said at the post-fight press conference, if that fight has brought them together, it's worth more than the weight of gold. And he said
Yeah.
he was really happy to see Senior there as well. It's bigger than boxing, this, isn't it? That moment, seeing Senior and Junior together again.
Well, listen, 100%. You've only got to listen to the crowd. When Senior turned up, everybody lost their mind. It was like it really was. It was like something out of a pantomime. It was like something out of a Batman film. Like when Batman turns up, the Cape Crusader, and people just lose their mind because the heroes turned up. That's what Eubank Senior brings to any event. He is a celebrity in every sense of the word. Sorry, I've got to turn that off. Sorry, Joe.
Just picking things back up here with Duke McKenzie. Looking towards, I guess you say, looking at the post-fight press conference and some of the things said, obviously, we know there wasn't one from Chris Eubank Jr., given the fact that he was off to hospital to have his checks after the fight. But Conor Benn appeared in front of the media with Eddie Hearn and Nigel Benn, and Eddie Hearn said, regardless of the result, Conor Benn showed last night that he is a world-class fighter now, and if he goes back to welterweight, he can win world titles and he's a superstar. How do you react to hearing those comments from Eddie Hearn?
Is he world class? He's boxed Eubank, and that makes him world class. Okay, if that's what it takes to be world class, then he's world class. I don't see that, but I think he'll probably get found out if he fights one of the world champions at welterweight. Listen, he's a nice kid, and he's got time to develop and maybe learn and get a world title fight. Listen, when you're talking from a promoter's perspective, Conor Benn's box office, you know, in Eddie Hearn's eyes now, that guy's a hero. He's just sold out a stadium, which is his stadium fighter. You can't put him in a hall. He's a stadium fighter. And if you've got a product like that, then you're going to sell it and make sure that he gets the opportunity at least to fight for a world title. So good luck to him. Good luck to him. Will he win it? We'll find out.
And then we know that the WBC allowed permission for the winner of the fight to go ahead now and face Canelo, which means the WBC would allow Chris Eubank Jr. versus Canelo to be made, I
Oh,
presume, sometime next year.
oh God, no. Let's again. I want to put things in perspective. I really feel that. Come here. Sorry, dogs decided to come here. If you put things in perspective, Eubank's punches had no effect whatsoever on a welterweight. So if he fights a middleweight, he's in trouble. He's going to be in serious trouble. Sorry, champ, my dog's decided to do one. He's having a bit of a moan. Can you decide what you want to do? You want to stay in or you want to go out? Sorry. He gets like this.
It's all
This
good.
is Trevor, my beagle. He has a little. You want to go out? You're going to start. Right. Come on, mate. Out you go. Yeah, here's a bit of a meltdown. Sorry, I do apologise.
It's all
Right,
good.
go on, champ.
Um,
Yeah, Eubank for me, like I say, he shouldn't even be boxing at middleweight because he can't make the middleweight limit. He's proven that. And for him to even suggest he wants to fight a truly fully fledged middleweight, one of the all-time greatest fighters of the modern era, it's borderline suicidal. It's crazy. He's really asking for trouble.
hmm. Do you feel a rematch is needed between the two? A lot of suggestions online say a rematch might be the next fight to make. But again, on the flip side, a lot of people saying we feel we've seen it all now. Even Eddie Hearn has come out and said that they're going to need to really think if they go down the road of a rematch, given how tough the fight was for Conor Benn last night.
Well, money talks, doesn't it? Money talk. I'm sure if they can sell it again, which they obviously can and will. Like I say, the stadium was a sellout, right? They, they'll probably fight again. For another 10, 20 million, whatever it is, because there's money to be made. They're a brand, they're a product. They can put it together, and they will put it together. And I dare say, then they'll fight again.
If they aren't to fight again and they do now go their separate ways, obviously we know Eubank Jr. does have that possible opportunity to face Canelo up at super middleweight now. But for Conor Benn, if it's not a world title fight, who would you like to see him go in there with? First of all, do you feel it's fair that he goes into a world title fight off the back of a defeat?
Is it fair? Probably not. But life isn't fair. So, which kind of makes it fair. You don't get what you want in life. You get what you pay for these days. And there isn't a more popular guy in the welterweight division than Conor Benn. He's just proven that. He played his part in making this fight happen. Obviously, the real star is Eubank because the way he sold this fight, as it's been well documented right across all social media, he's had everybody eating out of the palm of his hand from the minute this fight was made. And he is the real showman of the whole show. So, does Conor Benn deserve a world title fight? Probably not. Off the back of beating Eubank, who's never been a world champion or even won a domestic title, probably not.
Fair enough. Would you be open to see Conor Benn possibly face Harlem Eubank, who is a welterweight at 147? Is that a fight you'd like to see, maybe?
Boxing brothers, you mean? Well, listen, I think Senior would probably have a meltdown if that happened. No, I wouldn't like to see that. I don't like brothers fighting. I'd never fight mine. You couldn't pay me enough money.
So you wouldn't like to see Conor Benn take on Chris Eubank Jr.'s cousin,
No,
Harlem
no,
Eubank?
no, I wouldn't. No.
Fair enough. I suppose Duke, that's a good place to leave it then. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Really good to catch up, and we look forward to catching up again soon.
So thanks again. I appreciate you. Have a good day, Josh. And yeah, let's do it again, mate. I'm ready when you are.
Perfect.
I'm,
Thank
so, I'm sorry about the interaction.